Tom Reynolds had always loved the idea of living close to nature. Growing up in a busy city, he often dreamed of a quiet place far away from the noise, the rush, and the endless traffic. He imagined a small cabin nestled among tall pine trees, where he could watch the sun rise over a calm lake and hear nothing but the sound of birds and the wind in the branches. For years, Tom worked hard. He saved every penny, cutting back on little luxuries and working extra hours whenever he could. Friends and family thought he was a little crazy for dreaming so big, especially since he wasn't rich and didn't have a family to support. But Tom didn't care. He wanted that cabin more than anything. Finally, after almost 10 years of saving, he found it. It was an old cabin, a little run down, but full of character and charm. It sat on the edge of a beautiful lake in northern Minnesota, surrounded by tall trees and wildflowers. The paint was peeling, the windows were dusty, and the porch creaked, but Tom saw something special. This was his dream coming true. The first time Tom stepped inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The air smelled of pine and wood. Dust floated in the sunlight that streamed through the windows. There was a small stone fireplace, a simple wooden table, and a few chairs. It was humble, but it was home. Tom spent the first few days cleaning the cabin. He fixed the broken window latch and swept the floor. He brought a few things from his apartment: a lamp, some blankets, a small radio, and made the place feel warm and lived in. He even planted a few flowers near the porch. At night, Tom sat outside, staring at the stars. He could hear the gentle lapping of the lake's water and the distant hoot of an owl. For the first time in years, he felt calm. He was happy. For a few weeks, everything was perfect. Tom spent his days exploring the woods, fishing by the lake, and reading on the porch. He enjoyed the quiet, the fresh air, and the slow pace of life. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. Tom was sitting at the kitchen table, enjoying a cup of coffee, when he heard a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. He walked over and opened it. Standing there were 3 men in neat shirts and slacks. They looked official, but Tom didn't recognize them. "Good afternoon," one of the men said. "Are you Mr. Reynolds?" "Yes, that's me," Tom replied, feeling a little nervous. "We're from the Homeowners Association," the man said, holding out a clipboard. "We need to speak with you about your cabin." Tom frowned. "Homeowners Association? What's that?" The man explained that the cabin was part of a community with strict rules, called the HOA. These rules, he said, were created to keep the area safe and clean, but there had been some changes recently. He told Tom that his cabin did not meet some of the new rules. Tom felt confused. He had never heard about any of this before. What kind of rules? The man said that the cabin's exterior needed to be painted in a certain color, and some parts of the structure had to be fixed or replaced. If Tom didn't follow the rules, he might face fines or other actions. Tom looked at his cabin. Yes, it was old, but it was sturdy. The paint was faded, but it gave the cabin character. He didn't want to paint it a new color. It felt wrong to change it. "I didn't know about these rules," Tom said. "No one told me." The man shrugged. "The HOA sends out notices, but sometimes they don't reach everyone. You need to follow the rules if you want to keep your cabin." Tom felt his heart sink. This wasn't just about paint. It felt like they wanted to control his home, his peaceful place. He wanted to say no, but he didn't know what to do. The men left, but Tom couldn't stop thinking about their visit. That night, he sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames, feeling worried. Was this the start of trouble? Over the next few days, more letters came. They told Tom he had to repaint the cabin, fix the porch, and even remove some old furniture from outside. They warned him that if he didn't comply, they might take legal action. Tom felt alone. He thought about selling the cabin, but the idea broke his heart. This place was his dream, his safe space. He tried talking to neighbors, hoping someone could help. Most were friendly but didn't know much about the HOA rules. One neighbor, a kind woman named Sarah, told him that the HOA had been strict with other owners too, sometimes forcing them to make expensive repairs. Tom felt trapped. How could he fight an organization he barely understood? One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky orange and pink, Tom walked around the cabin. He touched the old wood, the chipped paint, the rusty nails. This cabin had stories, years of quiet mornings, laughter, and peace. He made a decision. He wasn't going to give up. This cabin was more than wood and nails. It was his home. He would stand his ground, no matter what. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. The coming days would test him in ways he never expected. He would face challenges, pressure, and tough choices. And it all started with that first knock on the door. The morning sun filtered softly through the pine trees as Tom Reynolds sat at his small kitchen table, his hands wrapped tightly around a cup of strong black coffee. Outside, the birds chirped cheerfully, but inside Tom's cabin, a heavy silence hung in the air. The worries about the homeowners association weighed on him like a dark cloud. Just a week ago, the visit from the HOA agents had seemed like a strange misunderstanding. Now, it felt like a serious threat. Every day since their visit, Tom had received letters. The notices were all the same: you must comply with HOA regulations, failure to comply will result in penalties, and immediate action required. Each letter was more demanding than the last. Tom didn't want to fight. He was tired from work, and the thought of dealing with complicated legal issues made his head spin. But he also couldn't imagine giving up his cabin. It was his dream, the place where he felt most alive. He looked out the window, watching the lake shimmer in the early morning light. The calm water seemed to mock his restless thoughts. Just then, a knock came at the door. Tom's heart jumped. He wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, he rose and opened the door. Standing there were two men. This time, they looked more serious than before. One of them wore a dark suit, the other had a clipboard in his hand. Their faces were polite but firm. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," said the man in the suit. "We are here again from the Homeowners Association." Tom stepped back to let them in. "What do you want now?" he asked quietly. "We need to discuss your compliance with the community regulations," the man said. "We have reviewed your property, and unfortunately, there are still several violations." Tom swallowed hard. "I'm doing my best," he said. "But this cabin is old, and I don't have a lot of money for repairs or painting." The man with the clipboard nodded. "We understand that, Mr. Reynolds. However, the rules are clear. The exterior must be painted in approved colors, the porch repaired, and any clutter removed from the yard." Tom glanced outside. He had some old tools and wooden crates stacked near the porch, but they were harmless. He didn't see why they mattered. The man continued, "If these issues are not corrected within 30 days, the HOA will take further action. This may include fines or even legal proceedings." Tom felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Legal proceedings. What does that mean? The man's eyes were steady. It means you could lose your right to the property if the violations are not fixed. Tom's mind raced. Losing his cabin? That was impossible. This was his home, the place he had waited so long for. He couldn't just give it up. We want to avoid that, Mr. Reynolds, the suited man said. But you need to cooperate. After a moment, Tom nodded slowly. I'll try. The men left, but the weight of their words stayed with him. That night, Tom sat by the fireplace, staring into the dancing flames. The fire crackled and popped, but inside, Tom felt cold and afraid. He thought about what to do next. Could he afford to repaint the cabin? Fix the porch? The cost was more than he expected. He worked hard, but money was tight. The next day, Tom drove into the nearest town. He wanted to find help, maybe someone who could explain the rules or help with repairs. At the local hardware store, he spoke with the owner, a friendly man named Bill. I got some letters from the HOA, Tom said, showing the papers. They want me to make changes I didn't know about. Bill nodded. That sounds like the HOA around here. They're strict, and sometimes not very fair. They want to keep the place looking perfect, but not everyone can afford that. Tom sighed. I don't want trouble. I just want to keep my cabin. Bill smiled kindly. I get it. Maybe you should talk to some neighbors. See if anyone has dealt with this before. Tom thanked Bill and left. Back at the cabin, he decided to visit the closest neighbor, an older woman named Sarah who lived a few houses down the dirt road. Sarah welcomed him with a warm smile. She had lived there for more than 20 years and knew the area well. After Tom explained his problem, Sarah nodded thoughtfully. The HOA's rules have gotten stricter in recent years, she said. Some people have had to make big repairs or even sell their cabins. It's tough, but you're not alone. Did you have problems with them? Tom asked. Sarah sighed. Yes, a few years back. They wanted me to replace my old windows and paint the siding a bright white. I didn't want to at first. But I didn't have much choice. Tom looked out at his own cabin. I don't want to change it too much. It feels right the way it is. Sarah reached over and patted his hand. I understand. But maybe you can find a middle ground. Talk to the HOA. Sometimes they listen if you explain your situation. Tom nodded slowly. I'll try. That night, Tom sat on his porch, wrapped in a warm blanket. The wind whispered through the trees, and the stars twinkled above. He felt the loneliness creep back in. He thought about giving up the fight, about selling the cabin and returning to his old apartment in the city. But that thought made his chest ache. This cabin was more than a house. It was hope. It was freedom. Suddenly, he heard footsteps crunching on the gravel driveway. His heart skipped a beat. He opened the door and saw a young man standing there. He was tall and friendly looking, with a kind smile. Hi, the man said. I'm Michael. I live a few miles down the road. I heard about your situation and wanted to offer some help. Tom blinked in surprise. Help? How? Michael pulled out a small notebook. I'm a lawyer. I specialize in helping people with problems like this. I've helped a few cabin owners fight unfair HOA rules. Tom felt a spark of hope. Really? That would be great. Michael smiled. Let's talk. Maybe we can find a way to keep your cabin without all this stress. For the first time in weeks, Tom felt a little lighter. Over the next few days, Michael came to visit Tom's cabin. They talked for hours about the HOA rules, what Tom was required to do, and what rights he had as a homeowner. Michael explained that the HOA didn't have unlimited power. There were laws to protect people like Tom. Sometimes HOAs try to scare people into giving up, Michael said. But if you know your rights and stand your ground, you can win. Tom listened carefully. He felt like he had found a friend. Together, they started planning how to respond to the HOA's demands. Michael suggested sending a letter explaining Tom's situation and asking for more time to make repairs. Tom felt nervous but also determined. The day the letter was mailed, Tom walked down to the mailbox with Michael. It felt like the first step in a long journey. But as they walked back to the cabin, Tom felt ready for whatever came next. He was not alone anymore. The days that followed the mailing of the letter to the Homeowners Association felt both long and hopeful for Tom Reynolds. He spent his mornings fixing small things around the cabin, tightening loose boards on the porch, cleaning the windows, and clearing away the wooden crates that had gathered dust near the door. It was slow work, and Tom was careful not to spend too much money. Every dollar counted, but he wanted to show the HOA that he was serious about keeping his home and following the rules, even if some of the demands seemed unfair. Michael, the lawyer, visited often. He helped Tom write letters and explained what to say if the HOA called or sent more notices. Sometimes, they sat on the porch, talking about life and the value of standing up for what is right. One afternoon, as the sun warmed the leaves on the tall trees around the cabin, Tom heard voices outside. He looked up to see two men approaching. This time, they didn't look friendly or polite. Their faces were serious, almost cold. Tom's heart began to race. It was the same men from the HOA. They had come again. This time, Tom wasn't going to be scared. He walked out onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking softly beneath his feet. His shotgun hung over his shoulder, not for violence, but as a symbol of his resolve. He didn't want trouble, he wanted respect. The men stopped in their tracks when they saw Tom standing there, calm but firm. "Mr. Reynolds," one of the men said. "We are here to remind you again that your cabin is not in compliance with HOA rules." Tom took a deep breath. "I'm working on it," he said. "I'm fixing the porch and cleaning up the yard." The man looked down at his clipboard, then back at Tom. "You have not made enough progress. The HOA board has voted to begin legal action if the repairs are not finished within 2 weeks. Tom's fists clenched at his sides. "I told you I need time. I'm doing what I can." The second man shifted uneasily. "That may be true, but the rules are the rules. You must follow them." Tom met their gaze steadily. "I'm asking for fairness, not just rules." For a moment, there was silence. The wind rustled the pine needles above, and a small bird chirped from a nearby branch. Then, the men nodded curtly and turned to leave. Tom stood on the porch, watching them go. His chest was heavy, but his spirit was stronger than ever. That evening, Michael came over with a folder full of papers. "We have a chance, Tom," he said. "If the HOA pushes you to court, I can help you fight it." Tom looked at the papers. "What do I have to do?" Michael smiled. "We prepare your case, gather evidence, and show that you're making an honest effort. HOAs don't always win when people stand their ground." Tom felt a mix of fear and hope. This fight was bigger than he expected, but now he had a guide. Days passed. Tom continued fixing the cabin as best he could, working from dawn till dusk. Neighbors brought tools and offered advice. Sarah, the kind woman from down the road, stopped by with a homemade pie and words of encouragement. "You're not alone, Tom," she said. "We all want to see you keep your cabin." One morning, Tom woke to find a small crowd gathered near the road. People he barely knew had come to support him. Some held signs with messages like "Save Tom's Cabin" and "HOA, listen to us." Tom was touched. The cabin was more than just his dream, it had become part of a community. Michael stood beside him. "This is good," he said. "The more support you have, the harder it will be for the HOA to push you out." That day, Tom felt a new kind of strength, a strength born from friendship, hope, and determination. But the battle was not over. One afternoon, the HOA sent a formal notice that legal action had officially begun. Tom was to appear at a hearing in the county courthouse in 2 weeks. Michael helped Tom prepare. They practiced answers, went over documents, and talked about how to stay calm. "I'll be with you every step of the way," Michael promised. The day of the hearing arrived with cold rain falling gently outside. Tom dressed in his best clothes, old but clean, and drove to the courthouse with Michael. Inside, the room was quiet and serious. The HOA representative sat at one side, confident and ready. Tom felt small but determined as he took his place. The hearing began with the HOA reading their complaints, the rules Tom had broken, the fines he owed, and their demand for him to leave the property. Then it was Tom's turn. With Michael's support, he told his story, how much the cabin meant to him, the efforts he had made to comply, and his hope for fairness. He spoke honestly about the challenges, the cost of repairs, the importance of his home, and the kindness of neighbors who stood with him. The judge listened carefully, asking questions and reviewing the evidence. After what felt like hours, the judge leaned forward and spoke gently. "Mr. Reynolds," he said, "I appreciate your efforts and the support of your community. The HOA rules are important, but so is fairness. I am granting you an extension of 3 months to complete the necessary repairs." Tom's heart lifted. It wasn't a full victory, but it was a chance, a real chance. Outside the courthouse, neighbors cheered. Tom felt tears in his eyes. For the first time, he believed he could win. Back at the cabin, Tom worked harder than ever. He painted, repaired, and cleaned, with help from friends and strangers who had become friends. The cabin began to change, not in a way that lost its charm, but in a way that showed love and care. Tom stood on the porch one evening, watching the sun set behind the trees. The lake glowed with golden light, and a soft breeze carried the scent of pine. He felt tired, but proud. He had faced fear, pressure, and the unknown, and he had not given up. With his shotgun resting by the door, a symbol not of violence, but of his strength, Tom smiled. This was his home. And he would stand his ground. The weeks passed slowly, but Tom Reynolds felt a new sense of hope growing inside him. The judge's decision had given him time, 3 whole months, to fix his cabin and keep his home. It was not just a deadline, it was a chance to show the HOA and everyone else that he was determined and strong. Every morning, Tom woke up early. He worked hard, painting the cabin's weathered wood with a soft, approved shade of green that blended perfectly with the trees. The porch, once creaky and weak, was now steady and strong. Tom replaced old nails, fixed the steps, and cleaned the area around the cabin until it sparkled. But the work was not easy. Some days, the wind was cold and sharp, cutting through his clothes. Other days, rain soaked the ground and made the repairs slow. Tom's hands became rough and calloused, but he didn't stop. Evenings were the hardest. As the sun sank behind the tall pine trees, Tom would sit on his porch and feel the weight of the fight ahead. He missed the quiet peace he had once found in the cabin. Now, every sound, every creak or crack reminded him of the battle he was fighting. Yet, there was comfort in knowing he wasn't alone. Michael, the lawyer, visited regularly, checking on the progress and offering advice. Sarah, his kind neighbor, brought warm meals and stories that made him laugh. The small group of neighbors who supported him had grown, and they often gathered around to lend a hand or share a word of encouragement. One cool morning, as Tom was sanding a wooden beam, he heard a car pull up the driveway. He wiped his hands on his jeans and looked up. A woman stepped out of the car. She was tall, with short brown hair and bright eyes that looked both serious and kind. Tom did not recognize her. "Hello," she said, smiling warmly. "My name is Emily. I'm with the local community council. I heard about your situation and wanted to see if I could help." Tom felt a flicker of hope. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate it." Emily nodded. "I've worked with people dealing with HOAs before. Sometimes, they don't understand how their rules affect real people." Tom invited her to sit on the porch. They talked for hours about the cabin, the HOA, and the challenges Tom faced. Emily listened carefully. "It's clear you care deeply about this place," she said. "And it's clear the HOA has been difficult. I want to help you find a solution that works for everyone." For the first time, Tom felt like someone outside the fight was on his side. Over the next few weeks, Emily worked with Tom and Michael. She attended HOA meetings and spoke with board members. She reminded them that the community was made of people like Tom, with dreams and struggles. At one meeting, Emily stood before the HOA board and said, "Rules are important, but so is compassion. We need to find ways to support homeowners, not push them away." The board members listened. Some nodded slowly. Change was possible. Meanwhile, Tom continued repairing his cabin. With Emily's help, he found resources to get better paint at a lower cost. Neighbors helped with heavy lifting and fixing parts of the porch that Tom couldn't reach alone. One afternoon, as the sun shone brightly, Tom and Emily walked around the cabin together. "You've done an amazing job," Emily said. "This place looks beautiful." Tom smiled, feeling a warmth inside. "I never wanted to change it too much. Just enough to keep it standing." Emily nodded. "Sometimes, standing your ground means knowing when to bend a little." Tom thought about that. He had fought hard, but he had also learned to ask for help and listen. The day of the final HOA inspection arrived. Tom felt nervous but ready. The board members walked slowly around the cabin, checking the paint, the porch, and the yard. After a long silence, the HOA president turned to Tom. "Mr. Reynolds, you have made great progress," she said. "We recognize your effort and commitment. Your cabin is now in compliance." Tom felt a wave of relief wash over him. Emily smiled proudly. "This is what happens when people work together." Tom looked around at the trees, the lake, and the cabin he had fought so hard to keep. He thought about the journey, the fear, the struggle, the friends who had stood by him. Most of all, he thought about hope. That night, as Tom sat on his porch, the shotgun resting quietly by the door, he knew this was just the beginning. But now, he had an unexpected ally, not just in Emily, but in the community that had become his second family. And together, they would protect the place they loved. The morning sun rose over the quiet lake, casting golden light on Tom Reynolds' cabin. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine and earth. After months of struggle, hard work, and unexpected friendships, the cabin looked as alive as Tom felt inside. The fight with the homeowners association had changed many things. It had tested Tom's patience, strength, and courage. But it had also brought him hope, community, and a new sense of purpose. On this particular morning, Tom stepped outside with a clear mind and a light heart. The shotgun rested safely by the door, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of his strength to protect what mattered most. Tom's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from Michael, his lawyer. Good news. The HOA officially closed your case today. No more fines, no more threats. You've won. Tom smiled and felt a wave of relief wash over him. Months ago, he had been scared the cabin would be taken away. Now, he was free to enjoy it fully. He looked around at the trees, the lake, and the small trail leading into the woods. The peace he had once dreamed of was finally his. But the story didn't end there. Tom invited his neighbors and friends over for a small celebration. Sarah brought homemade cookies, Emily brought coffee, and Michael came with stories and laughter. The gathering was simple but warm. Everyone shared their own stories, how they had faced challenges and how they had supported one another. Tom stood in front of the group, his eyes shining with gratitude. I never thought I'd get through this alone, he said. But thanks to all of you, and to Michael and Emily, I did. This cabin means more than a house to me, it's a symbol of hope and community. His friends cheered, and Tom felt a deep connection with everyone around him. After the celebration, Tom walked down to the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the bright blue sky. He dipped his hands into the cool water and felt a sense of peace. His thoughts drifted back to the beginning, the moment he first arrived, full of dreams and hopes. The fight with the HOA had been difficult, but it had also taught him valuable lessons. He had learned to stand up for himself, to ask for help, and to believe in the kindness of others. Just then, Emily appeared beside him, carrying a small box. I have something for you, she said with a smile. Tom opened the box and found a simple wooden plaque. Carved into it were the words, "Home is where the heart stands strong." Tom's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, he whispered. Emily nodded. You earned it. The days that followed were filled with simple joys, walking through the woods, fishing in the lake, and fixing little things around the cabin. Tom felt stronger and more hopeful than ever before. He had turned his fear into courage and his struggle into a story of triumph. One afternoon, as he worked on the porch, Michael called. I have some news, Michael said. There's a new program starting in the county to help homeowners like you. They want to support people who face unfair HOA challenges. Tom was surprised but happy. That sounds great. Michael continued, they want you to be a part of it, to share your story and help others. Tom thought for a moment. The idea of helping others gave him a new purpose. I'm in, he said. If my story can help someone else, I want to share it. Tom began visiting community meetings, speaking to people who were afraid of losing their homes. He told them about his fight, the support he found, and the importance of standing up with kindness and patience. His words gave others courage. Slowly, the neighborhood began to change, not just in rules and buildings, but in spirit. People started helping one another, listening more, and working together. The HOA also changed. The board began to meet with residents, listening to concerns and finding ways to be fairer. Tom smiled. The cabin was not just a place, it was a community. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, Tom sat on his porch with Sarah, Emily, and Michael. They watched the lake shimmer in the fading light. "I never imagined this journey," Tom said quietly. "It was hard, but I've learned so much." Sarah nodded. "Sometimes the hardest battles bring the greatest rewards." Emily smiled. "And sometimes, the fight shows us who our true friends are." Michael raised his cup. "To Tom, and to home." They all cheered softly. The cabin stood strong, surrounded by tall pines and the love of a community that had grown together through challenge and hope. Tom looked out at the stars that night and felt peaceful. His journey had been difficult, but it had made him stronger, kinder, and more connected. He knew the future might bring new challenges, but for now, he was home. And home was where his heart stood strong.